Alright, so this is part 2 of uncertainty discussion with Logger Pro, and one of the great things about Logger Pro is it allows you to manipulate your max and min slopes for the uncertainty of your trend line. Okay, so as you can see, I already had the trend line drawn on my graph. My data is shown on the left, and I already have my display of what the slope and the y-intercept are for the trend line of the data that was taken. But now we have to compare it to the data with the uncertainty built in. So you're really going to look at what's the maximum amount of error in the slope and what's the minimum amount of error in the slope using your error bars. So I'm really going to compare first 2 points. It only really deals with the first data point and the last data point. I want to compare this spot right here. If you can notice, there's kind of like an imaginary box using the error bars around this point. I want to compare the farthest, the lower left corner of that box with the upper right corner of the farthest point to the right, that box. Okay, so I'm going to draw a trend line on there, and I'm actually going to be able to do it by hand using Logger Pro. So I'm going to go up to Analyze and Model, and because it's an mx plus b, it's a linear slope, I'm going to leave a linear function. I'm going to leave it marked as linear, and as you can tell, okay, as soon as I move this, you get a generic box, and here's your line. Okay, but what you can do is if you just double click on your data box, you can go and enable the line drag, and if you notice, you get these little gray diamonds which allow you to move it around. Okay, so after I notice that, I'm going to start manipulating it a little. Okay, it takes a little bit of movement to get it where you want it. So I want my line to go through the corner, the lower left hand corner of the first error box and the upper right hand corner of the last error box. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing, and it does take some adjustment before I move on. It does take a little bit of adjustment, okay, to get to where you want it. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it from the upper left hand corner of the first little error box down right about there. Let me turn off enable line drag so I don't move it again. Okay, I'm going to go right about this spot right there where you see the black crosshairs to the lower right hand box of the last point where you see the crosshairs now. Okay, so I'm going to do the same process. It's still mx plus b, so I'm going to leave it as a linear function. And again, you get a generic line that you want to enable line drag. And then your goal is to have it pass through those 2 points. The lower right corner of the last box and the upper left of the first one. And again, as you move it around, it does take a little practice to get it right where you want it. Okay, and by doing that, we turn off line drag. You can see that you now have your slope right here, 0.1057. Okay, and you also have 2 other points: the maximum slope it could be using your uncertainty, and the minimum slope it could be using uncertainty. So that gives you a whole slew of new information to analyze and evaluate, because there are a lot of things that depend upon if your actual slope falls in between your limits. Okay, so it does, that's a good sign. So then you can start looking at, are there outliers, and things like that. Okay, and that's another screencast to look at. This was just how do you get them on your graph, right? So I highly suggest you learn how to use Logger Pro. You do need to be able to do this by hand on an IB exam at some point this year and next year. But again, when you do it by hand, you are allowed to use a ruler and judge it with the naked eye, and then find the slope of the line that you've drawn. Okay, so this really isn't any different. It's just the computer's doing that last calculation for you. Okay, hope this helps.